Alright, so I made a video on the policy update, and we received a letter from the global community producer that decided to address some concerns that might have popped up with the wording and the examples used in the policy update. It's an understandable thing. Those examples could be somewhat worrying in cases where someone worried, like, if I question this guy's strategy too hard when I'm in a PF with him, will I get reported and get suspended, get a strike on my account for that? It was an understandable worry. This sort of thing was bound to cause a lot of conversation, some distress, some excitement for folks. But we have a letter officially following up on it. And since I've already read the previous policy update to you guys, it felt only fair to read the follow-up, to read the way the dev team and the global community producer address any concerns brought up by the initial article. So, it starts out with, "Greetings, this is Toshio Murochi, the global community producer for Final Fantasy XIV. Thank you for reading over the recently updated Prohibited Activities and Account Penalty Policy. Following the update, there have been many lively discussions in the community. While we appreciate the interest shown by players, we've noticed instances where they were becoming overly worried as a result of hearsay or hearing only bits and pieces of the details. To this end, I'd like to follow up with clarification regarding some of the larger points of discussion. If you haven't reviewed the recent changes, I encourage you to take this opportunity to do so. As a premise, the update introduced 2 new Party Finder related prohibitions, but aside from these, there are no changes to communication related matters, and this policy won't have any significant impact on those who've been playing normally without incurring any violations. We hope you'll continue to be considerate of others and play in your usual manner." So it seems the big point they want to communicate here, that Toshio wants to communicate, is that there won't be any significant impact to players with this update, with the examples they've given. They're trying to set the line that we've made it clear what kind of things our policies look for now, but that doesn't mean you'll be dinged for everything that could look like an infraction. So this continues with, "Does this mean I can no longer give other players any advice? We saw concerns that, based on the examples of expressions that compel a playing style under nuisance behavior, players may not be able to say anything at all or have any means of offering advice. Getting to the point, there is no issue with offering advice. Communication is an important aspect of participating in duties with other players. The problem lies with attitudes such as, 'my opinion is absolute and anyone who doesn't listen is wrong,' or behavior accompanied by arrogant, oppressive speech and conduct. Exchanging opinions is perfectly fine, as it's only natural that those receiving the advice will have their own ideas and opinions. Of course, there may be cases where you don't see eye to eye on opinions or principles, or cases where the person offering advice is correct and the person receiving it is in the wrong. Communication is not black and white, and the idea that offering a suggestion will be immediately equated to compelling a playstyle is too extreme. There may be times where you're met with an extreme or backhanded response, and in such cases, please feel free to file a report and entrust the decision to us. Rest assured, we do not issue penalties solely based on the fact that a report was filed, and will thoroughly investigate the logs for context as necessary before making a decision." So, just like I opened up with, it really seems that he put out this statement to help alleviate some of the fear, some of the rumors that you would get dinged easier for things, that things would change because of the way they've now clarified things. And as he's saying, that doesn't seem to be the case. There's a lot going on, and they're going to thoroughly investigate every report they get about such things. So let's see here if I can find the next slide, because goodness gracious, I'm doing my best over here. It's early in the morning. I made this 3 hours after they made the post. Here we go. This should be it. "Additionally, there is the option to abandon the duty and disband should you feel the other players unwilling to accept your differences, as well as the option for the person feeling at odds with the group, which may be yourself, to leave the party. Using these various options at your disposal, rather than being fixated with offering advice or communicating opinions, is crucial in circumventing conflicts before they become overblown. It then goes on to, is selling clears prohibited? Another topic I'd like to address is whether the new Party Finder restrictions prohibit mercenary activities, offering assistance with clearing duties or obtaining items in exchange for gil or other compensation in general. Though the situation varied with each region, there were an enormous number of cases where RMT vendors created recruitment listings in the Party Finder under the guise of mercenary activities, which hindered normal players in their use of the Party Finder. The changes made at this time are intended as measures to rectify the situation and promptly crack down on fraudulent recruitment listings. As a result, we've prohibited advertising mercenary activities in Party Finder, but recruiting for mercenaries offering compensation in exchange for assistance is not prohibited. Players seeking help are still allowed to create recruitment listings, such as offering 100,000 gil per player if we clear. Moving forward, if you would like to engage in mercenary activities, we ask that you search for and join recruitment listings from players seeking help. On a final note, based on our experience, there have been many cases where penalized players didn't understand what they did wrong or what the issue was. So we added many examples to the prohibited activities in hopes of lowering the number of such cases. While we've seen concerns that this will make it difficult to say anything at all, targeting certain expressions is not our intention. In other words, simply saying something mentioned in our examples doesn't necessarily guarantee a penalty. If a report is filed, the full context of the conversation is thoroughly investigated, and if we find a violation, only then will a penalty be imposed. As such, to reiterate, there is no need to worry any more than before. So, as one could reasonably expect, as everything below the blowing this up and the getting antsy about things goes, it's really just don't do the things we explicitly said not to do. In the cases where communication could be the issue, we're going to take a look at the full logs, and as long as it looks like nobody's trying to be arrogant, nobody's trying to create a bad time for someone else by insisting that they're right and the other person is wrong, then everything should be okay. And ultimately, you have the decision to use your words, and where you feel words won't suffice, to take action directly by leaving the party or something similar. Nothing has changed since the original policies. Nothing has changed since back in the day, where if you were a jerk to people in party and you got reported, you would get dinged. But if you were explaining something and they reported you, you probably didn't hear about it because they investigated it and found that you weren't being out of your mind, you weren't power tripping, you were just trying to solve a problem, and when things got wild, you got out of there and somebody reported you. Didn't fall under the clause. You were fine, everything's fine, nothing has changed. We're just offering clarification so that people don't get dinged and then see us in the jail, in GM jail, and go, well, I don't understand why I got hit. This is an attempt to cut down on that so that hopefully there are just less dings handed out in general. And so the last section goes, since the document only lists prohibited activities, looking at it by itself may give a dreadful impression. But aside from the two new Party Finder related prohibitions, we've merely added examples, and the rules themselves have not changed since the amendments in 2019. Therefore, if you've been playing without incurring any violations, and of course without receiving any penalties, then there will be no problem with playing as you usually do and remaining considerate of others. The document can be summed up as, due to the nature of an online game, the people we encounter in-game are also individuals with varying personalities, so our speech and conduct should always take others into consideration. We ask your understanding regarding the purpose of our various agreements and prohibited activities, and appreciate your cooperation in ensuring the healthy operations of Final Fantasy XIV. Toshio Morochi, Final Fantasy XIV Global Community Producer. So, the grand takeaway from this is not a lot has actually changed with the rules. What has changed has been made clear, and the previous rules have been made more clear, so that it's harder to weasel away with, we had no idea, we didn't know, what did we do wrong, and so it's easier for people to avoid doing the wrong thing in the first place. It's just a clarity update for the most part, save for the Party Finder stuff, which was mostly changed to avoid RMT and interruption of gameplay thereby. So that seems to be the big message, the big follow-up and update we've gotten from the 14 team. And again, it just seems like everything is fine, everything's coasting, everything's pretty much as normal, save for the PF changes. And I really haven't seen anyone that's been super rocked over the PF changes that seemed like they were, all the way just, I'm in trouble and I didn't deserve this. Nobody's been freaking out about this that hard. Most of the upset about this has been, what if I get dinged because of some overly sensitive matter? What if it's something where I was in the right and it just seemed like the rules wouldn't favor me? And it doesn't seem like that's the case. If you've been doing fine so far, you will likely continue to do just fine. Just be considerate of other people is all they're asking, and I think that's the least we can do for a community we love. So, thank you guys so much for listening. I hope this helped clarify some things and keep up with the news from the Final Fantasy XIV dev team. If you enjoy the video, if you like having these read out for you, or just want to have a discussion, feel free to leave a comment, subscribe, like, all that good stuff. It's 7 in the morning, and I'm supposed to be going to watch a movie later, so I'm going to go get some sleep. Hope you have a fantastic weekend, and I'll see you guys the next I stream or next video.